Do you wish to speak to suspension standing orders? Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I do wish to speak to the motion to suspend standing orders. Deputy Speaker, we, being the government, are approaching this bill and the outcomes that this bill seeks to remedy with a degree of urgency and a degree of haste. I acknowledge to this House and to members that this is an uncommon but not unusual step to seek to suspend standing orders, and we do so acknowledging that members will need to likely, or potentially I should say, sit until all matters are proceeded with this evening, including committee stage and third reading. In doing so, I thank members for their collaborative approach on this. But the truth is, Mr Deputy Speaker, if the House and this Parliament at large does not move with urgency and haste to seek to not only pass this bill but remedy the circumstances of which this bill seeks to address, employers and workers in this state will suffer significant hardship at a time when they can least wear it, and at a time when this government is most committed to moving with the appropriate urgency to ensure this bill does pass this evening.
You want to speak to suspension standing orders? Okay. Yeah, a member from Moriata.
Thank you, sir. Look, the opposition does not support the suspension of standing orders. It does not mean that we do not wish to see a suitable resolution to this matter so that people can know what the rules are to be very clearly going forward. But there are a range of opportunities available to this government this week, even in the context of the embarrassment that they have suffered as a result of the instructions given to the Premier by his friends in the union movement. There were still other things that could have been done. The government had a bill to deal with this matter, brought to the Legislative Council by the relevant minister, which was understood to be ready to be debated this week. Indeed, there were briefings taking place on Friday about that bill. There were indeed meetings to be taking place at the beginning of this week on that bill, and the opposition had said that we would be ready to have a position to deal with that bill by tomorrow in the Legislative Council. None of that is relevant now because the government, of its own volition, pulled their own bill yesterday morning and now brought forward a different solution. A different solution which the Premier earlier today said suitably balanced the needs of labour and capital.
Member for Moriata, I think you're straying a bit from the suspension. If you want to debate the merits, then
Sir,
you need to do it.
Thank you. I appreciate your guidance. The point of the suspension was that this needs to be dealt with urgently, according to the government. And the point I make is that in doing so, that does not remove the requirement that this Parliament give appropriate consideration to how to appropriately balance those needs identified by the Premier before. And it's tremendously important that we do so because the very reason, the very trigger that has caused the challenge in the first place is what, as far as I can tell, is an unintended consequence of the legislation as was previously understood. It certainly was understood in a different way by the board for a number of years until the case in question that has triggered this spate of activity. So, does a course of action need to be taken? Yes, of course. The government tells us now that this reform to an incredibly important bill must be debated today.
A point of order has been called. Minister.
So the member is not arguing about why the suspension of standing orders should or shouldn't be debated. He's not mentioned the bills that are on the government business program that would normally take precedence over this matter. He's simply now arguing the merits of the bill. It's disorderly and he's wasting the Parliament's time.
I'll let the member from Moriata just continue, but he just better wind it up soon.
Sir, I believe I have 8 minutes.
Well, if you're going to use the 8 minutes,
I'm checking whether that's the case.
If you're going to use the 8 minutes, you better not stray one word.
Certainly. Sir, The motion in question is to debate urgently a particular bill, and the minister set out a set of reasons why he believed that it should take precedence, and indeed further, and this is important, it goes directly to the point I was just making, why we need to move through all stages, why standing orders need to be suspended. Now, the standing orders exist, sir, in order to allow bills to have suitable consideration. It is a standing order that when the second reading of a bill has been moved, that the debate be adjourned. It's usually adjourned to the next day of sitting. The best practice is 10 days. I believe the Leader of the House reminded me on my first week in the job when I was Leader of the House. But that sometimes is contravened. and sometimes there are exceptions. This is understood. But let us not for one second think that it's anything other than the government's own decision to bring this bill at this time and now say that it requires to be debated immediately. The Leader of the House spoke to me, I think, at about 8:30 this morning and identified that the government might be seeking to suspend standing orders this afternoon to go through all stages of this bill this afternoon, as opposed to going through a more orderly practice, as per the standing orders, of having the minister explain the bill in detail, members getting a chance to read the bill, consult on the bill, and form a view before participating further in debate and forming a vote. That is the orderly way of things, and especially when dealing with a bill of substance that will impact on the way that every business in South Australia carries out its work. Then we get to the question of the bill itself, which was, as I understand, provided in draft form at 10 o'clock this morning and provided in final form about 2 hours ago to the opposition to have a look at. And the government asks now that, having had the bill for 2 hours, which was a period that included question time, of course, sir, when all of the members of the House were indeed active participants in listening to the government's answers to the questions being asked at the time, that is, I would suggest, not even the bare minimum time required for any sensible consideration of a bill. It is, I think, a reflection on the way the government considers this House. And going towards the prioritisation that the member for West Torrens asked about, there is, in fact, a budget of approaching $20 billion, which is the subject of debate which is being set aside by the government, if this motion passes, to debate rather than doing this. That budget must be passed by tomorrow. There is a hard deadline. There is estimates on Friday. The budget second reading must be passed so that it can be sent to estimates. Now, the government could well have sat past 6 p.m. last night. They chose not to do so, so we'll no doubt be having to deal with that either tonight or throughout tomorrow. That is as it is. But the government is the one that has decided that this bill in this House takes prioritisation, takes precedence over the budget, and the opposition does not agree that that is appropriate. And here we get to the next part, especially because, sir, there is an alternative remedy. The Legislative Council, the chamber in which the relevant minister with responsibility for the bill in question is also sitting. It's right over there. It's about a 30-metre walk. Advisors who are supporting the minister, advisors who are supporting them. It's quite funny. The advisors who are supporting the minister in question could just as easily support their own minister, the Minister for Industrial Relations, in their chamber where this could get consideration. I don't know why the government feels that it cannot rely on the Industrial Relations Minister or indeed the Legislative Council chamber to deal with this matter today, why it has to be in the alternative chamber, the chamber where another minister is, rather than dealing with the Legislative Council chamber.
Point of order.
I'm reluctant to do this here, but Standing Order 120, reference to debate in the other House. A member may not refer to any debate in the other House of Parliament.
Yeah.
It's in question in the other House because the government has brought it here, sir. I'm nearly done. I've nearly made my... I've been 6 minutes.
Yes.
Plus points of order. I'm nearly done, sir.
I kind of recommend that you just limit your comments to what's happened in this chamber, please.
Sir, the opposition is familiar with the numbers in the chamber. I suspect, although I hope the backbench of the Labor Party will hear the force and merits of the arguments I've put, but I suspect they will stick with the caucus line and support the suspension. And so, acknowledging that, I make the point that the opposition will contribute to debate as constructively as we can, but it must be remembered the ink is barely dry on the bill that has just been provided, and this is clearly not best practice in legislating any matter, let alone something so important, and we oppose the suspension of standing orders on that basis.
Okay, the question is standing orders be suspended so far as to enable the bill to go through all the stages. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Those against say no. I declare it carried.